I actually love the choir. I think the choir is amazing. It's
Yeah,
great
it's
to
a
have
great-
them here,
I'm not
which is
saying it's
actually
not a great choir.
No,
It's
it's really great. No, it's really great to have this discussion. It's an honor to be here and with heroes on this podium. Every day when Blake would write a piece, it would be emailed around the staff. You usually get it around as soon as it hit the website. It was being passed around saying Blake got it again. So he really nailed it. AA's piece was extraordinary. I mean, if I were a right winger, I would have pulled that piece. Not, I mean, it was the most powerful piece. I mean, it was really the and then what you did about stirring that debate about artists' rights was just wonderful, and still the ripples are still going. There's lots of lawyers talking about artists' rights and affecting censorship, which was started by AA. And also, it was funny when I met Dennis. I mean, having lived in LA for 24 years, I'm not usually starstruck, but I was excited to meet Dennis. Now, some of you might say because there was a movie actually made about Dennis starring James Woods, but that's not why. I was excited. I mean, because I think that that was such an incredible seminal moment, and it's fascinating how many people, when you say the word Corcoran and when you say the word Mapplethorpe, it brings all this up. It's an incredible word association that exists 20 years later.
Corcoran's never recovered, in fact.
Right.
Exactly.
At all.
Although we did meet at the ironically at the Corcoran, which was amazing to think here we are. And so I think there is something about learning from your mistakes and the lessons that we can learn. I just wanted to say a couple of things about one of the reasons why we're honored to have Katrina here is I always feel like the nation connects the dots for us. And I feel like the people from the American Way, we're in the connect the dots business about connecting why these issues are very relevant. And I think this issue is really important because it allows us to understand really what's at stake in America. And Katrina had mentioned the murals in Maine, that it wasn't the paint they used or the lighting on the pieces. It was the labor part they didn't like. On this one, it was the gay part they didn't like. I think there's that effort of, I guess the art should only be flowers and trees. I wanted to respond to your point about the bellicose terms and war-related things. I think it's when we're at 3 wars and counting, I haven't read the paper today, but I'm thinking we're 3. We all have to be really conscious about language. I absolutely agree, and I think we also have to recognize the way they describe it. I mean, the left didn't choose the word culture wars and say, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could go out there and defend Robert Mapplethorpe or David Wojnarowicz or whoever, that it's that this is something that they called, related to that, I've been thinking, when I was thinking about this panel, and actually I looked up the quote, I kept on thinking of Pat Buchanan, who gave that speech in prime time at the Republican Convention in Houston in 1992. Which is very relevant to this because he said, quote unquote, there is a religious war going on in our country for the soul of America. It is a cultural war, as critical to the kind of nation we will one day be as was the Cold War itself, which made me realize how that statement could be made today, yet that was many years ago. And I think it's really important. And people, when he did that, and in that election, people, when they were aware of what was at stake, they realized, this was not the America we want to be or the world we want to be living in. And I think it's important to call it for what it is and to respond and to fight back or speak up or do whatever it is your ability to do, because otherwise I think we end up becoming victims and nothing changes. At People of the American Way, we do a lot of studying of the right wing and the religious right, and it's been really interesting in terms of this whole. And the point of this report, by the way, is we decided, hey, let's have this as a history, but also let's talk about what do we do now, and how should we respond in the future. And that's why it's so great that this panel is happening. That there's been so much discussion that has been generated by the Smithsonian effort that it's. I think it's important to say, what do you do? What do you do now? A lot of it is about sticking to your principles. and it's so great having Dennis here because that was then, and that took months to build in that former media environment. Jesse Helms could jump up and down about Robert Mapplethorpe, but it took a long time for that message to hit the press and that people be concerned about it, and then it filtering down in America, and many months later, they could take Dennis to trial on that. But now we are living in a world where within 24 hours, as Blake had mentioned, you can have a piece that's censored. You can have something that goes out on the internet. You can have people sending an email. Eric Cantor, who ironically was defending Christmas in this, saying, this exhibit, basically, I can't believe they're ruining Christmas by showing this. And John Boehner, who didn't even have to see the exhibit, and then within 24 hours, there was this total cave. And we've seen it in other ways, too. I mean, the murals were down very, very quickly in Maine. Shirley Sherrod was fired so they wouldn't have to endure more than one news cycle. A lot of this basically dealing with very false information and altered information. The whole freedom of speech thing is interesting when you look at it in terms of the Planned Parenthood video, which was doctored to make it look to have a certain viewpoint, yet now I'm excited that people have been fighting back and saying, you know what, this is actually really a bridge too far. But this is happening all over. We've been following a lot in the Texas textbooks. I would say everything that's old is new again. This was a battle that was being fought in the 80s, and here we are again now trying to defend history. And the Texas textbooks are where they say that Jefferson really was not so good. He was more of a socialist, and we need to get him out. We had the ironic thing that Dolores Huerta, who was one of our board members at People for the American Way, that they wanted to take her out of the Texas textbooks because she was a socialist, which she's not. And they wanted to replace her actually with Helen Keller, who was a famous socialist, which was incredible. So this is not, it's not often based on facts, and I think we all know about the Huck Finn thing of rewriting that. And it was interesting because at first glance it makes it look like, is this about political correctness? And you say, no, it's really about rewriting history and explaining it in a different way. We've follow a number of people on the right who were actually very powerful. David Barton is somebody that you probably don't know his name, but you know his work because he will take information, such as that the Bible is against minimum wage, collective bargaining, and most richly the capital gains tax, and takes that biblical interpretation and puts it into history, and says that the founding fathers actually believed that as well. And so if you really look at which is how you get to the thing about saying that the First Amendment only applies to Christians. Is this some radical person that nobody follows? No, he's followed by many of the presidential candidates. And as a matter of fact, Mike Huckabee recently said that students should be forced to learn David Barton by gunpoint, which I thought was amazingly ironic. So I want to, I will end by just saying that I think that the two things which really inform a lot of the Smithsonian stuff is kind of this dual thing that's happening. One is that there's this kind of war against Christians. And out of that stems from the fact that Christians are being victimized, which basically informs much of the work. So therefore, you look at this, it was basically that by showing the ants on the cross, this was somehow bullying Christians into a certain thing. So that's the whole concept of a Christian nation and Christians as victims is I think something that's we're going to have to really monitor and be mindful of.